Frieren and Gojo Satoru might seem like they are from completely different worlds, but they actually share fascinating traits: unruly and overpowered. These traits have helped them gain popularity while also exposing deeper layers to their characters. But why Frieren's character development feels thought-provoking in the early parts of the story, while Gojo's ending has stirred up controversy? Hey, my name's Ellie. Today let's explore the archetype of unruly and overpowered characters. And here's a spoiler warning for Frieren Beyond Journey's End and Jujutsu Kaisen. Unruly, overpowered characters naturally have charm and tension, which is why it's no surprise that both Frieren and Gojo have become so popular. On the battlefield, they are decisive and ruthless, yet in their everyday lives, they sometimes act like mischievous kids, even needing others to take care of them. This contrast resonates with audiences. While their strength commands respect, it also creates a bit of distance. However, their willfulness intentionally shows their vulnerabilities, bringing the unrealistic characters closer to the audience and enhancing their relatability. And when these characters are underestimated by other characters because of their willfulness, then prove themselves with undeniable power, it creates an exhilarating experience. So, in the early parts of the story, the author likes to highlight the contrast to grab the audience's attention. However, charm alone can't sustain a character in the long run, and real depth emerges when we start questioning the reasons behind their unruliness and strength. This brings us to our next point: the why behind the power. Having innate power alone makes the audience think a character is just lucky, which doesn't build empathy. So, authors usually put their strong characters on a journey to help them grow. Even Gojo had to train hard to master his complex techniques. Typically, this journey requires a driving force and motivation, which form the core of the character. Both Jujutsu Kaisen and Frieren did a solid job of presenting this. The death of Rigo makes Gojo realize how decayed the Jujutsu world has become, igniting his determination to change it. And when Frieren's people are killed by demons, her hatred fuels her decision to hide her mana until she can finally defeat the Demon King. But this is where their storylines take different paths. Most of Frieren's strong moments revolve around her responding to her initial motivation for getting stronger. This reinforces her character's drive, allowing the audience to clearly feel she's walking her path, which generates a sense of accomplishment. For instance, when she defeats Aura and Solitia, I felt her hatred for the demons and the emotional release that followed. In contrast, Gojo's battle feels disconnected from his desire to improve the Jujutsu higher-ups. His main opponents are cursed spirits, not the corrupt higher-ups. This creates a logical gap that the audience has to fill in. For example, defeating cursed spirits is supposed to intimidate higher-ups, giving him the freedom to train students who will eventually change the Jujutsu world. But from a storytelling perspective, the longer that logical chain becomes, the more the emotional impact starts to fade. Plus, it's difficult for the audience to really judge how much intimidation is actually needed, or how many cursed spirits need to be defeated to achieve those goals. When Gojo's battle don't intuitively push his goals forward, it becomes harder for the audience to feel a sense of accomplishment, and they end up focusing just on the action. Maybe that's why the later parts of Jujutsu Kaisen are packed with battles, while the transformation of the Jujutsu world gets minimal space in the narrative. Of course, this is also a problem Frieren might face at Foundation Festival arc. I'll explain this in a separate video. In short, initial motivations shape unruly and overpowered characters and test if they'll use their power to pursue these goals. However, they can't wield their strength recklessly, as power brings consequences and cost, which leads us to our next point: boundaries and consequences. Boundaries are there to restrain willfulness. Even if Frieren can wipe out soldiers, she still lets them subdue her. And while Unlimited Void is incredibly powerful, Gojo is cautious about using it because he fears it might harm ordinary people. Setting up boundaries is pretty straightforward. First, there are status boundaries. When the author places these characters in a specific position in the world, anything above that status becomes a boundary. For instance, Frieren has to follow the laws in each city, and Gojo has to navigate the higher-ups as well. Next, there are ability boundaries, which tie closely to the story's combat system. Whose abilities surpass that character's? What are the downsides of their abilities? These factors directly influence when a character should act recklessly and when they should be careful. However, both Frieren and Jujutsu Kaisen have some imperfections in this area, which I'll save for another video. But beyond boundaries, the true depth comes from the consequences of power. To link this idea with character development, it's effective to make these consequences a roadblock in the character arc. For Frieren, I personally believe her arc is about transforming from a cold individual into someone who can truly understand others. However, her long lifespan makes it challenging for her to feel moved or affected by trivial matters. Her power also keeps people at a distance. This very strength can hold her back from growth. Yet, despite this, Frieren makes an effort to understand others, overcoming the curse from her power in order to fulfill her arc. This process is a key to resonating with the audience. However, I couldn't find a similar trajectory for Gojo. According to his last words since Geto's departure, he has battled the loneliness that comes with being powerful. This gives Gojo potential for a character arc. He could have cultivated students strong enough to relate to him, breaking his solitude. Even if he failed, it could still create a tragedy with aesthetic value. But Sukuna's sudden appearance interrupts this arc. It's like grinding for hours to level up in a game, only to get a cheat item. Now Gojo doesn't need to train new strongmen because Sukuna just appears out of nowhere. This plot point effectively stops his character growth. If Gojo had chosen to tackle Sukuna to protect his students, then if he wins, the character arc is complete. Even if he dies and Sukuna is defeated by the students, the story can still escalate to Gojo as a powerhouse failed, but Gojo as a trainer of powerhouse succeeded. Sadly, he ends up feeling more like a pure battle enthusiast, wanting to take down Sukuna not for the sake of his students, but just to match up against another powerhouse. This shift raises questions. If he is just after strength, why was he initially focused on training students and seeking change? Why not team up with Kenjaku or take on strong sorcerers directly? Therefore, Gojo's death creates a tricky situation. Sukuna represents the powerful figure in his mind, yet he can't express his feelings. His students are potential powerhouses, but he seems indifferent to whether they get killed by Sukuna. He neither achieves his goal nor experiences real growth. He doesn't even fit the mold of a tragic figure. This may underline why these two characters feel so different. One completes growth by confronting the curse of power, while the other is left with unresolved regrets amid the fallout of that power. Maybe this is also why the further development of Gojo has stirred up so much controversy.